Welcome to Myth Madness. Last episode, I retold one of the most celebrated stories from the Shahnameh, an epic poem completed by the Persian poet Ferdowsi in 1010 AD. That story was about how Zal, the clever young prince who as a baby was found by the mythical Simorgh bird and raised to adulthood, and a beautiful princess from Kabul named Rutabaga, fell in love with one another. But it was a forbidden love. Rutabaga's family were rivals of Persia's king and Zal's overlord. The romance had all the makings of a tragedy, but fortunately for Zal and Rutabaga, it didn't end that way. Everyone kept their heads, common sense and honesty prevailed, and the two young lovers were married. The first part of this episode will retell what the Shahnameh says about their son Rostam, the most important Persian hero in the rest of the Shahnameh. In this season on Persian mythology, I am primarily relying on the Shahnameh for telling the myths. It provides an excellent structure to follow, covering multiple generations of heroes, and is stuffed with details. However, it's not my only source. The Avesta, a collection of ancient Zoroastrian religious texts, are another great source, and there are also other epic poems written more around the time of the Shahnameh too. Along the way, I've been sprinkling in references from these other sources to give a fuller picture of Persian mythology, beyond what is just in the Shahnameh. Strangely, as central as Rostam is in the Shahnameh, the poem does not tell a whole lot about his childhood and youth. To get more of that, I will use other epic poems. But first, let's cover what is said in the Shahnameh about his birth. Shortly after Zal and Rutabaga's marriage, Rutabaga became pregnant. Her belly filled out, and her cheeks began to turn yellow. She told her mother Sindukht that her time had come, but she doubted she would be able to deliver the baby within her. Rutabaga had no peace, moaning day and night. One day she fainted, and Sindukht grew worried that her daughter might not make it through her labor. She told Zal that his beloved cypress tree was withering away, and Zal went to Rutabaga's bedside with tears in his eyes. But then Zal remembered he possessed something special, something that might help. As a baby, Zal had been abandoned by his father Sam. The magical Simorgh bird had found him, taken him back to her nest, and raised him alongside her chicks. Years later, his father Sam came looking for him, but when Zal left the Simorgh's nest to be taken by Sam back to Sistan, his bird foster mother gave him some of her feathers and instructions on how to use them if he ever needed her help. Now, following the Simorgh's instructions, Zal lit a brazier and made a small flame. He took one of the Simorgh's feathers and burned it ever so slightly. The smoke wafted up and the air darkened. Then the Simorgh appeared from thin air. She told Zal his wife was about to give birth to a superhuman hero, but he needed to first find a sharp knife and a man trained in magic. The Simorgh told Zal to get his wife drunk on wine and allow the magician to perform a caesarean section. He would cut open Rutabaga's belly, deliver the baby, and sew her up again. It would be Zal's job to grind special herbs into a paste, mix them with milk and musk, and then massage them into Rutabaga's stitches. When the Simorgh was done speaking, one of her feathers fell to the ground at Zal's feet, and she disappeared. Zal did what the Simorgh said. A special priest came to Sistan and carried out the caesarean section. Zal followed the Simorgh's instructions, and a child was brought into the world. Rutabaga survived, and when she saw her baby boy, she smiled. Rutabaga said, "I escaped from my peril," and for that reason she named her son Rostam, which comes from the Persian word for escape, Rastam. To celebrate, festivities were held and there was much music and wine drinking. 10 wet nurses were brought to the palace to suckle the newborn baby. When he was ready, he was given apples and meat to eat. The young Rostam ate enough food for 5 grown men. He grew quickly and soon stood 8 spans high. He looked just like his grandfather Sam. Sam himself was far away fighting a war when he heard he was now a grandfather. He assigned his army to one of his commanders and then made the long journey back to Sistan. Zal and Rutabaga's father Mehrab, who had also come, welcomed him. They carried the baby Rostam on the back of an elephant. When Sam saw him, he was overjoyed. He blessed Rostam and wished that he would have a long and happy life. When Rostam was still a boy, he had already grown taller than his father Zal and any of the other Sistani men. He wanted to join his comrades in their wars against the enemy nation of Turan. Zal was reluctant to allow this. In his mind, Rostam was still too young. His mouth still smelled of milk, after all. But Zal was charmed by Rostam's insistence, and finally agreed. Before Rostam could go and play at being a warrior, he needed to choose a horse. Zal owned several large herds of horses, and the chief herdsman tried to help Rostam find one he could take ownership of. Yet, whenever Rostam picked a horse and sat on its back, his heavy weight made the horse's back buckle until its belly touched the ground. He couldn't possibly ride such a horse into battle. After a long day of this, they took a break as a herd of horses was driven past. Rostam watched them gallop by and spied a mare with a strong chest, short legs, and plump hindquarters among the herd. Behind her came a baby horse that looked a lot like its mother. Rostam looped his lasso and got ready to rope in the large young horse. Zal's chief herdsman warned Rostam that the horse did not belong to him. When asked who the owner was, the herdsman said he didn't know, but he and the other horse grooms affectionately called it Rostam's Raksh. It was old enough to be saddled, but whenever one of the other noblemen tried, its mother would attack them until they ran away. Rostam roared at it, and the sound made the mother scramble away to hide. Rostam then approached the baby and climbed up to put his weight on its back. The horse didn't even budge. It was solid. Its spine did not bend. Finally satisfied, Rostam declared that the horse, Raksh, was perfect and would be able to withstand his weight. He asked how much it was. The herdsman replied that the price was Iran itself, since on its back Rostam could defend the entire kingdom and be the world's savior. So Rostam saddled Raksh and set out, his mind full of thoughts of battle and glory. The Babar-e-Bayan is Rostam's famous impenetrable armor, and it and Rostam's horse are the two special things that make Rostam such a formidable warrior. The Babar-e-Bayan is typically described as being made of tiger skin. Interestingly, while the Shahnameh mentions this armor, it does not explain where Rostam got it. However, other Persian texts do. The typical story is that one day King Manichir was holding a great feast for all his nobles and leading warriors. Zal traveled to the capital to attend, and he took Rostam, who was either 14 or 17, it depends on the version, with him. In the middle of the feast, a messenger rushed into the great hall and begged the king to send someone to India to kill a monster that was terrorizing the people there. Manichir asked Zal to deal with it. Rostam doubted his father was strong enough to complete the task and objected in front of the assembled nobles. Zal was deeply offended by this, and the hero Gudarz, who was supposed to be Rostam's mentor, tried to slap Rostam across the face for insulting his father. But Rostam was not one to take a slap. He fought back, knocking him unconscious. Rostam then left the great hall. Manichir probably hoped for a merry feast free of drama, but so much for that. Rostam went to the armory to prepare for his journey to India. He asked to be given his ancestor's weapon, Sam's mace, although it's not clear why Sam's mace was in the royal armory. By the time Gudarz woke up, Rostam was gone. The older man worried about his young, impulsive ward and hurried after him. However, Rostam was traveling in disguise. Calling himself Alborz, he ran into the army commanders Garan and Keshvad on his way to India. Rostam, hot-headed as always, got into a fight with them too. He defeated the two men and then took them and 120 of their own followers captive. Rostam then continued on to India. Once in India, Rostam killed the terrible monster. The beast's corpse was skinned, and the skin was used to make Rostam's armor, the Babar-e-Bayan. The beast is either a ferocious tiger or a dragon. It was possibly a dragon in the original story, but was changed into a tiger over time. By the time of the Middle Ages, it was understood to be a tiger, and that is the understanding which is referenced in the Shahnameh and is widespread today. Many examples of Persian art show the armor as a tiger skin, with obvious stripes of orange and black. After killing the beast, the king of India thanked Rostam by holding a feast in his honor, and marrying the hero to the king's daughter. The same night, Rostam and the princess slept together, and another hero, Rostam's son Faramars, was conceived. In that adventure, Rostam is presented as an impulsive young man who sets out on an adventure against the warnings of others. He argues and fights against people who he would otherwise be allied with, and repeatedly does what he wishes. In the end, it works out for him. Poor behavior aside, the superhuman hero succeeds in his quest. In another young Rostam adventure, not present in the body of the Shahnameh poem, there's another example of this. The story is found in the Calcutta manuscript of the Shahnameh. In it, a warlord named Kok-i-Kuzad is introduced and who terrorizes eastern Iran. He ruled his territory from an impenetrable fortress called Marbad, and had defeated many Iranian nobles, including Zal, in battle. Marbad was located on the route to India. To keep passage open, Zal paid Kok tribute, but this was a carefully kept secret. Zal did not want his son Rostam to find out about the situation. Zal feared that if Rostam found out, the young man would feel shame, out of impulse try and fight Kok, and then be killed. But one day, when Rostam was traveling with the Persian warriors Keshvad and Milad, they ran into two men who were amazed at Rostam's strength and stature. The strangers compared the hero to the mighty Kok, but Rostam, having never heard of Kok before, asked them who that was. The men were astonished, and they told Rostam about the whole Kok situation, and how the old warlord had defeated Rostam's family on several occasions. Just as Zal had feared, the story emboldened Rostam, and he immediately headed to Marbad. Once there, Rostam challenged Kok to a duel, and the warlord accepted. The two men at first rode around each other, shooting arrows, but then they switched to closer combat. They fought for a long time, but eventually Rostam managed to grab hold of Kok, throw him to the ground, and dash his brains on the rocks. Then, with the warlord dead, Rostam ordered Marbad destroyed. Its walls and fortress were torn down, rock by rock, and the way to India was restored. As I mentioned earlier, Gudarz was supposed to be Rostam's mentor. In Persian legend, there is a close relationship between the families of Zal and the hero Gudarz. Zal put Gudarz in charge of Rostam's upbringing, and this reflects a very ancient Iranian custom, where the son of one noble family would be sent to live with another allied noble family for a traditional education. The young man would learn how to fight, ride horses, behave at court, and other things that were considered necessary to live as a member of the Persian nobility. When the young man was older, he would be sent back home. Gudarz and his family are important characters in the Shahnameh, so who exactly are they? Gudarz is the son of another warrior named Keshvad. Keshvad was a powerful general during the reigns of Nozar and Kawad, who I will talk about next episode. The Shahnameh describes Keshvad as a vanquisher of armies and of the golden helmet. He was a noble and he was based in Estakar, a city in what is now the Fars province of southern Iran. Gudarz himself is another powerful warrior who fights many battles throughout the Shahnameh, so he will pop up again in later episodes. He has 78 sons, and the most important of these is another warrior named Giv. The names Gudarz and Giv can be traced back to the Parthian era of Persia's history. As a reminder, after Alexander the Great conquered the First Persian Empire, Persia was ruled by Greeks for the next 200 years. But by 130 BC, the ruler of Parthia, a land in the Far East in what is now northeastern Iran and southern Turkmenistan, expanded his kingdom to cover much of the old Persian Empire. The following Parthian Empire lasted approximately 400 years. Greek cultural influence remained, but there was also a revival of Iranian art and fashion. In the end, the Parthian Empire grew weak from repeated wars with Rome in the west, nomadic invasions in the east, and rivalries between noble houses within. It was eventually replaced by a new Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, in 224 AD. As I've discussed in past episodes, Persian mythology has several layered influences. Many of the legendary kings are referenced in the ancient Avesta, taking these characters back to before 1500 BC. Gudarz and Giv are not mentioned in the Avesta. They have Parthian names, making them evidence of a distinct Parthian layer influencing later Persian mythology. Legends of Parthian warriors were mixed with the legends of the kings and heroes from the Avesta to create a new cycle of interrelated myths, and these later inspired Ferdowsi's Shahnameh and the later epic poems. But where did Rostam and his family come from? Like Gudarz and Give, they are not mentioned in the Avesta, yet Ferdowsi did not make them up. Stories about Rostam were already popular in eastern Iran in the 600s AD, and there is some evidence, like names on bowls or in fragmentary documents even earlier than that too. Zal and Rostam were closely linked to the area of Sistan, a region in the far east of Iran. That fact might give us another clue. In its heyday, the Parthian Empire often dealt with invasions of nomadic tribes from Central Asia. One of the most fierce were the Sakas, another Iranian people. The Sakas eventually settled in the area of Sistan. The name Sistan even comes from the name Sakas. It's possible that with the introduction of Rostam's stories, we have yet another layer to Persian mythology, this one influenced by the Sakas of Sistan. And that's all for today. This shorter episode was intended to introduce Rostam, who is the most significant hero in the Shahnameh. As I mentioned before, this part of the Shahnameh begins to focus on the heroes instead of the kings of Iran. It also starts to focus on a conflict between Iran and an outside power. The next episode will begin to focus on that feud, so stay tuned for next time.